Improving your conditioning as an athlete could be the difference of you winning or losing. In all sports, some form of conditioning takes place and is important. Whether that's something that's highly technical and as fatigue sets in, technique starts to drop. One, that can mean you're not as efficient with your movements, and two, that could open you up into causing more injuries. So today we're going to focus on touching on a few things as far as how to plan some conditioning within your program. Now when it comes to strength and power, there's a lot of literature that talks about sets, reps, rest periods, and those types of variables within that program. But when it comes to conditioning, there's a lot of misinformation. So today we're going to talk about the first is, should athletes be doing conditioning year-round? So that's a question where I think there's a lot of misconfusion. A lot of coaches, especially sport coaches, they tend to focus on developing a lot of conditioning out of season or in the preseason. But once season rolls around, they tend to shy away from it because they think that it's going to overtrain their athletes. So what happens is they start to play more games, they're practicing, so they think they're getting enough conditioning through that mode of training, but they're missing the aspect that sometimes it doesn't have to look exactly the same as far as conditioning goes during season and out of season. In my opinion, during the season, there should still be some form of conditioning. Now, the volume starts to drop significantly, but the intensities remain relatively high. This is going to ensure that that athlete is continuing to be explosive and being able to withstand some high intensity type of stimulus that they're going to experience during a match on the field or on the court. The second thing we're going to talk about is the type of exercise for that given conditioning. So if you look on the screen, we have a rower, an aerodyne bike, some stairs, and some hill sprints. And there's a lot of other types of conditioning like battle ropes, maybe even doing some things in the pool. Now, in my opinion, it does matter. I work with professional boxers, and once they're getting closer to their fight, my goal is to not have them do any type of sprints. I'd rather have them do things on the aerodyne or maybe on the prowler where there's not that much eccentric overload that's going to get them really sore in the hamstrings and the glutes leading into their sparring session. So it does matter where you program the type or the exercises within that conditioning program, within that training program. So certain times of the year, maybe in the off season, you might be doing some more road work, some more jogging, some things that it's not a bad thing if you get sore, but during the season, we want to minimize that. So again, not as much volume, but the intensity can remain relatively high. The last thing we're going to talk about are some tools for conditioning. As you can see on the screen, we have a heart rate monitor, and then we have a training mask. Now, the heart rate monitor, in my opinion, is one of the best tools to make your conditioning much more effective and efficient. It's going to take a lot of the guesswork where an arbitrary number of a minute or a minute and a half of rest period, instead of looking at it very arbitrarily, now we're using this device that as soon as you get to a given heart rate zone, you're moving into your next interval. So it becomes much more individualized for your specific fitness at that given time. So in my opinion, the heart rate monitor comes in handy if you know how to utilize it. There's certain tests that you want to perform that's going to get you and give you those numbers as far as the zones. And then when we as coaches program what type of intensity we want, that's going to be your job as an athlete to get to that zone of training. And then when it comes to recovery, once you're at a certain threshold as far as beats per minute, that's when you're going to start the next interval versus an arbitrary 1 minute, 2 minute, or 3 minute rest period. Now the last thing is data. The data on the screen here is some data from one of my boxers who fought for the lightweight world title in Manchester. And during his training camp, I gathered some data as far as heart rate. This is all within a sparring session. So I'm getting heart rate data. He's not wearing a heart rate monitor because that wouldn't be practical. But during his rest between the rounds, I'm measuring his heart rate with my 2 fingers at the neck. And the other data has to do with active time. So within each round, I'm timing to see how much time he's active. And it's just gathering data to see are there any rounds where he's experiencing high fatigue, and that could lead us into getting some more effective conditioning sessions where I know this, and maybe during that time period of those given rounds, we can learn to teach that body how to push. But it's also teaching the athlete how to utilize better recovery after each round. So utilizing a heart rate monitor or heart rate training can very much make your conditioning much more effective and efficient. If you have any more questions, feel free to comment below. Tag any of your teammates, your friends that might benefit from this information, and stay tuned for much more information as far as heart rate and conditioning type seminars, clinics, and videos. Feel free to share this video. That way more athletes and coaches can get this information and best utilize it. Until next time.